wants to replace federal income tax with tariffs.
And it's going to be a good thing.
No, it's not.
Look at this. Bermuda charges the highest tariffs of any country in the world. Yet, they're the fourth most successful country in the world in terms of GDP per capita.
Fucking Bermuda, do you work for SpaceX? Because you just blew way past disingenuous outliers to outer fucking space, because this comparison stupidity is out of this goddamn world. 64,000 people live in fucking Bermuda. There's more people at a Tennessee Titans home game than there is people in fucking Bermuda. And nobody goes to Tennessee Titans games. Like, I don't know a single Tennessee Titans fan, and I fucking lived in Tennessee for a while. Well, Bristol, Virginia, technically, but that bordered Bristol, Tennessee, and you could literally stumble into Tennessee or back. I did. Frequently. What I'm saying is, it's not really a great representation of the global economy when the entire fucking country couldn't even fill a football stadium. But did you ever just take a moment to venture a guess as to why a little fucking island would have such a high GDP per capita? No, you didn't, because that would have at least required the critical thinking skills of a fucking gerbil, and those are not to be found here. See, Bermuda, like the Cayman Islands and whatnot, is considered a tax haven. Bermuda doesn't really have anything to offer the rest of the world except for some sunny beaches. So what they do to bring money to their economy is they don't charge an income tax. And that attracts rich white welfare queens that want to leech off of all of the benefits that their societies that they live in have to offer without actually paying the taxes they owe to that society. So they go to places like Bermuda to set up rich white welfare queen type businesses like banking and insurance. And then they pretend to run those businesses out of there so they don't have to pay taxes to the places they actually live. And because it's almost exclusively financial services, the import tariffs don't affect them because, you know, they don't live there and they're not importing anything. They're just laundering theirs and a bunch of other rich assholes' money, which is not subject to tariffs, through their tax haven. And then the other 30% of Bermuda's GDP is generated through tourism, which is just where a bunch of rich assholes go to sit on a Bermuda beach and spend all of that money they didn't have to pay taxes on because they laundered it through Bermuda banks. And the tariffs do actually affect that. It's a lot more expensive to vacation in Bermuda than it is in other similar tropic locations. Because, you know, they gotta import all the shit that tourists want. But when rich fucks are on vacation, they don't care if they're spending twice as much on Mai Tais. So a country that has a population that makes Cheyenne, Wyoming look like a booming metropolis and makes nearly the entirety of their GDP off of people who don't fucking live there, it doesn't really paint an accurate picture of how tariffs work at all, let alone how they're gonna affect soybean farmers in fucking Iowa. And if you weren't so determined to be a disingenuous fuck, you could have even looked up how tariffs will affect soybean farmers in Iowa. Because, you know, Orange Julius Caesar put tariffs on China the last time he was in office and started his little trade war, and all of the farmers' markets fell out and he had to bail them out with great big government handouts.
In 1913, the United States imposed federal income taxes, and look what happened to the value of the US dollar there afterward.
Aw, look at you, you found a graph. It doesn't mean what you think it means, but you found one. Now, first off, there's a bit of a difference between correlation and causation, but trying to explain that to somebody whose IQ is slightly lower than the elevation of New Orleans is not a task I feel like tackling today. Thankfully, I don't have to, because your little graph doesn't show correlation or causation. Now, sure, federal income tax did start in 1913, but if we get a graph that starts, you know, before 1913, you can see that 1913 has no fucking relevance on the valuation of a dollar. See how the US dollar has fluctuated over time? And do you see how it had already been declining for decades before 1913? And then sure, there was a pretty steep drop-off right after 1913, and I can't think of any geopolitical event that could have affected the valuation of currency right after 1913. Well, I mean, aside from, you know, that little scuffle that started in 1914, I'm not surprised if you hadn't heard about it. It was just this one minor historical event where practically every country on Earth tried killing each other. I guess you could call it a war that, you know, involved the world, like a world war. And then you can see here that after the war, the value kept going down, even though they cut taxes to next to nothing. And then we had a Great Depression because, you know, conservatives can't manage a fucking economy. And then we jacked up taxes to like a 95% top marginal tax rate, and the value of the dollar went up. However, the value of our dollar had very little to do with the federal tax rate. I'm just pointing that out to show you that your point was stupid.
Donald Trump announced that he's putting a 25% tariff on everything coming from Mexico and Canada on day one of his presidency.
Until Canada and Mexico stop the invasion of illegal aliens and drugs into our country.
Yeah, all those damn illegal Canadians sneaking into America and stealing our really expensive, low-quality healthcare, smuggling in all their low-cost prescription drugs and selling them on the black market to grandma so she doesn't die when United Healthcare denies her diabetes medication.
Why did you ignore that Trump is only proposing this as a negotiating tactic to get Mexico and Canada to stop flooding our country with illegal immigrants and drugs?
Because it's stupid? Not worth acknowledging? This is just you morons getting mad about problems that you yourselves made up once again. First of all, like 90% of the illegal drugs smuggled into the United States are done so by US citizens. So what the fuck is Mexico and Canada supposed to do about it? Last I checked, the only reason anybody's smuggling drugs across the border is because of our archaic drug laws that give them a market to smuggle them into. The drugs are only coming in because we provide them with a market, which is again an us problem. How the fuck is Mexico and Canada supposed to stop Americans from buying drugs? And honestly, this is just capitalism. Like, we are creating a demand for illegal drugs, and entrepreneurial capitalists, who are mostly Americans, are meeting that demand by smuggling in the illegal drugs. Oh, and the invasion of immigrants that is just slightly less invasive than they were nearly 2 decades ago, when the population of undocumented immigrants in the United States peaked in 2007. And how dare Mexico and Canada, apparently, allow the hardest working, most productive, and most law-abiding people we have in our country to sneak in. Because, you know, undocumented immigrants commit crime at like less than half the rate of US-born citizens, and they're responsible for more GDP in the city of Houston than like the entire country of Bermuda. By a lot. In fact, by some estimates, undocumented immigrants contribute over $320 billion to the U.S.'s GDP. Oh, and did you ever stop to think about why these people would want to come to the United States at all, rather than staying in their own countries where, you know, they have a life and families and friends? I'm sure it has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that the United States spent over a century fucking their countries up and destabilizing them and propping up dictators and banana republics and drug cartels, because communism bad. And also, you know, bananas. Real thing. We overthrew entire governments for bananas. You know, the little yellow fruit that I'm sure has been the cause of one of your more awkward ER visits. I'm assuming. I don't really know. You just sort of give off the vibes of somebody who's gone to the ER for a banana-related incident. But hey, even if these were real problems that weren't completely made up, and that was the real reason that McNugget Mussolini was wanting to put these tariffs on them, all these tariffs are gonna do is just make the shit more expensive for us. 60% of our imported oil comes from Canada. Tons of our agricultural imports, especially seasonal ones, come from Mexico. We've got tons of manufacturing in both countries. And it might not matter to you, but the rest of us have to live in a country where people like you fucking exist. And that requires a lot of goddamn Crown Royal and tequila to deal with. So you put a 25% tariff on that, and that just means that we all have to pay 25% more to buy the same exact shit. This is like pointing a gun at our own foot and then threatening other people to do what we tell them. Just goddamn it, Canada, you better stop the Mexicans from sneaking in hardworking, law-abiding people, or I'm gonna make it so I never walk again. Don't test me, I swear I'll do it. I mean, sure, it'll hurt them as well some, because we will buy less of their stuff because, you know, we can't afford it. That still hurts us more because that's us who can't afford it, which is painful for us. And all to stop make-believe problems you blindly believe exist because brown people are scary.
You guys need to get new script writers at the DNC.
Well, maybe if we had some of your Russian propaganda money, we could afford them. But even if we had that, I don't know what the going rate was on integrity, and I was gonna ask you. But then I realized you're too insignificant to even get the Russian propaganda money, so I guess y'all probably wouldn't know because none of y'all ever had any integrity to sell in the first place.